Welcome to another episode of the Lone Recruiter Podcast. I'm your host, Brett Clemenson, and today we are joined by the wonderful Marie Victor. Marie, welcome.
Hi, everyone. Good morning.
Yes, it is a good morning, although it is a bit wet outside. We want to get into today's episode quickly because there's a lot to cover. Marie is going to talk to us around the challenges she's faced going from TA or internal recruitment back into agency. So to give you a bit of an overview of her, 13 years in recruitment, most of it in engineering and in and around the engineering sphere within Australia.
That's right.
Started in agency. The bulk of her experience is talent acquisition and client side. She's worked for KBR, WSP and the likes of. That's where I met Marie. And now she's come back into agency late last year and really finding her feet now and kicking goals, which is awesome. But I do know at the beginning, there's obviously like that gap between going in-house to agency. And I want to explore that with you because I think there's a lot of listeners who are going to be in the same boat thinking, man, I really want to go back into agency. Well, this episode's for you. So let's just kick it off. What were some of the biggest challenges you've had going from TA to agency?
I think the biggest one was personally my confidence.
Yep.
So getting back into that sort of sales mindset again. It's not obviously just sales, but obviously business development is the biggest challenge when you go back into doing recruitment. But with your help and the help of the team, I think it's gone a little bit easier if I look at the whole spectrum of things. But yeah, it is when I decided to leave agency recruitment, I don't know, about 8 or 9 years ago, I swore to myself that I would never go back into agency again because it was a lot about chasing the next month. I felt like I was never living in the present moment. I was always living in the next month because it was all about billing and what are you going to do for your next month. So going into internal, I saw it as taking a break, to be honest. Although obviously internal has its own challenge, but it was definitely so much different. Although, the two obviously is the same job at the end of the day, but there's a huge difference in terms of the adrenaline that you get, in terms of the ups and downs, and the sales part of it.
So are you saying that the adrenaline and the ups and downs you get more of in agency or you get more of in TA?
You get it more in agency. So as we all know, working in agency, you obviously you've got your salary, etc. But there's also like that commission aspect that you want to make out of your placement. So it is a lot about trying to do as much as possible. Whereas when you are internal, so it all kind of is in a package. So you do have more in terms of target to reach, but it's not the same pressure. It's a different type of pressure.
Because when you're in TA, like the amount of roles you would have at any given time would be what?
It would be way more than what we do in agency. So typically what the team will try to keep it on is about 20 at a time. But it's very rarely happen that you have 20 at a time. Usually if you have 20 at a time, you start panicking a little bit because that's the normal. That's not the normal. I've gone to between 50 to 60 on some occasions. And there's no way. Yes.
When you present candidates internally, when you're a TA and you're going, okay, I've done the market, like I've got 60 roles, 50 roles on, and you're going to those internal stakeholders and saying, here's some people, go and interview them. That is essentially what an external agency does. But is there a different feel to how they respond to you, external versus internal, or is it just the same?
It is the same. I feel like it is the same. Obviously, you have a bit more buying and they listen a little bit more to you, I guess, in terms of your opinion when you are internal. And that's the part that I really liked when I was internal. Is I guess they don't really have a choice as well, right?
Mm.
But you there's more pressure in presenting the right candidate. I feel when you are internal,
Right.
because there's nowhere to hide. I think if you are working in agency and you don't want to mess it up, but if you happen to mess it up and you don't bring the right candidate and the person is not nice to you, you can just bring your business elsewhere, right? You can just move to the next client. Whereas when
Mm.
you're internal, you have no choice. Like you have to all the time being on top of things. You all the time have to be like in the game and bringing the right candidates. You
Mm.
always have to explain yourself. You have the tough for the non so great stakeholders. Even if they're not nice to you, like you still have to find a way of getting around it and be at the top of
Mm.
your game all the time.
So you mentioned in terms of your biggest challenge going back into agency was business development, because obviously you don't do it in the same way internally, right? Like you still need to engage with the internal stakeholders, but it's not the same as paving your month in terms of going, okay, I know where the work's coming, I know who's interested in paying my fee and all that sort of stuff. So how did talk? Let's talk about that challenge, because I know that that was probably one of your biggest challenges going back into agency. But you seem to have, come a long way since that. Um, Talk me through that challenge, because I think that you touched on it, but I'd love to explore it, because I think that's going to be the one that most TAs going back into agency under, what's the word, undercook, or like don't realize it's not 2021 where you just pick up the phone and they say, yes, we want your business. It's actually a different market. So how did what's your approach? How have you felt like unraveling your mental blocks or whatever around business development and like your worth as a recruiter? Because I know that, again, you thought you'd never go back to agency. So I know there's a lot in that, but it all comes back to, I think, mindset and how you approach BD. Talk me around that. Like, was it fear when you came out? Was it excitement? Was it both?
Yeah, definitely both fear and excitement. So fear, I guess the way that I approached it when I came back was I was trying to think of how I personally dealt with external recruiters when I was internal,
Mm.
and that's how it started. So basically, when I'm internal, you especially if you work in engineering, you get bombarded by calls all the time to
Mm.
a point where you obviously the receptionist or whoever met the phone will try and block most of these calls. Regardless, I think I was pretty good. I always had my number out there. People would call me and I'd be quite responsive to their calls. But a lot of the time, you are so much in demand and so absorbing your work that you don't really have time to all these calls. So I started my journey back thinking, these people that I'm going to talk to, they're super busy. They don't want to talk to me. And why would they want to talk to me? So I had too many questions in my head. And the other thing as well is because both of the internal roles I had, the whole recruitment process is run by the talent acquisition team. I
Mm.
felt like I had to talk to the talent acquisition team of whoever I was talking to. So I started there. And then I started getting a lot of rejections, a rejection from the person that was manning the phone, from like the front office people, from the TA people never returning your call or just obviously just saying no. But when I started talking to the right people and focusing in that niche area that I wanted to recruit, I started feeling that it got a little bit better and easier. So my
Mm.
obviously niche or target market now is mostly working with smaller consulting firm that only have one TA or no TA at all. And then I'm talking mostly to the directors of the company or the team leads or whoever who are more responsive to be listening to you. Because the other thing as well is, you and I met when I was internal and you were a
Mm.
recruiter. But although I've created some really good relationship with some people, I always saw recruiters being like a bit of my competitors. So for me personally,
Right.
giving a job out to recruiters, it was a bit of a failure for my job. I always wanted to, as my main goal, being internal, is to save money for the company. That was my biggest thing. So as much
Mm.
as possible, not go out to agency. But sometimes, obviously, we all know there's scenarios where you can't do that. So I felt like external recruiters, like if I gave a job, I'd always try and beat them, which is not a great thing to say. But so that's what I felt when I went back. I was like, I don't want to be competing. Where do I work? So it's just trying to find that niche thing. And I also came back during this time where we all know at the moment there's a lot of uncertainty in the market, there's redundancies happening. My niche has always been working on big projects like big roads, like rail,
Mm.
etc., which is not really happening at the moment. So I had to kind of change that whole aspect. So going into something that I don't know was a little bit of a difficulty. But then I was talking to one of my friend who's a recruiter as well, been an agency for a long time and now internal. And she said to me, why would you be talking to them, try to sell them something, like try to remove that sales aspect out of it and just approach it as having a conversation.
Mm.
And either, you're trying to promote somebody or just knowing what's happening in the market and wanting to know more about their business. So when I approach it that way, then it started being a little bit easier because it was more kind of back to be stakeholder management or just, reaching out like stakeholder conversations rather than pitching a candidate or doing a sale or just wanting their job.
So it's interesting. So the way your mindset in a TA role really was, I mean, to be commended in that you're hired to do a job and you went, I want to do the best by my employer and I want to cut out cost as much as I can. Great. I mean, that's you doing your job, but it's almost like that competitive edge you have when you've gone back to agency. You've also taken that with you and assumed that everyone's like that, which they're not, And I think,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
every company has a different directive, and every company's in a different position. But the key I take out of what you're saying there is that where you started finding your feet was going, where is my value? Where
Yes.
can I be valuable? And I think, and I saw that hand in hand. I know when you came out and started going back to people you knew, it was like you almost knew it wasn't going to work because you worked in those environments. You knew that they were not receptive to TA. They would do it if they had to, but it would be rare occasions. You kind of knew that in the back of your head, so you probably approached it in a way that was very passive and tentative. But then there was this shift, as you say, going, you know what? Like some other people in this business are working with like that next tier down who don't have strong TA teams or even TA at all. That's where your value provides. So that's an interesting like observation.
Yeah, and it's also you. I came into this with an idea in mind that I would use my network, that I would use the people that already know who I am and know what I'm good at. But the reality of things is the people that I'm used to be talking to, um, like there's not much happening in this industry, in
Mm,
this market at the moment. So I had to quickly realize that I had to move on and do
mm,
something different. And you and I talked a lot about the new market that I'm working in, doing more like smaller civil work, land development stuff. So it's just realizing at some point that I thought I had to let go of things, but I'm just putting it on hold.
mm,
But trying to move away and go to where the thing is, where the job is. And
mm.
that reminded me what my first recruiter job, the manager on my first day gave me a book to read. It was Follow My Cheese, I think it's called. Follow
Where's
Your
the
Cheese?
cheese?
Yeah, Where's
Or
the
who?
Cheese? Yes, that's the
Where's the
one.
cheese?
Where's the
Yes.
cheese? Yes. So it is quickly, you have to remind yourself, is there money here? Is the cheese there? Or you need to go further along to get it? Or do you sit back and wait for it to come to you? or how fast do you move. So I had to really sit and think of all these things of putting myself back into this mindset, or what are the hurdles that I've had in the past and how did I overcome it. So when I was in agency before, I was working in the mining sector, and then all of a sudden there was lots of redundancies, and I was left without any client to work with. And then all of a sudden after that, there was like the earthquake in Christchurch. So I quickly took people from here, placing there. It was a quick reaction that I have lost when I went internal. So I had to
Where's
remind
the
myself.
cheese? I
Yes,
like that.
exactly.
So,
I think
so if
that's
you're
one of the best thing that recruitment has given me, that this woman has given me. It's just you have to react. You can't be all over the place, obviously, just chopping and turning here, because you want obviously make the relationship that you want, but you still have to somehow follow where the money is.
100%. Mate, this has been a great insight to the transition from TA to agency. I'm going to leave it there because we're into the 15-minute mark and it's getting long for our audience. We've got to go off and do our own recruiting. On a last note, do you have any advice for anyone who's in TA thinking about going out in agency? If you're sitting there with, you went back in time and you're talking to yourself, or you've got a friend who's going from TA to agency, what's that one bit of advice you're going to say to them? Just watch out for this, or just make sure you do this. What does anything come to mind?
The number one is all the the stats. When I was in agency before, we had to like send, I don't know, 200 200 clients in a week or something like that. So
Wow.
ridiculous about, how many people you need to be talking to. And we had to register all this. So this has stayed in my head that this is what it was going to be going back into agency. So obviously working with you just reminded me that it doesn't have to be like that. You have one quality candidate and you can just use this person, just understand the person, understand what they're looking for, and help them find the best role that suits them. So on the opposite of brand, so when I'm in internal, I love representing a brand. So what I'm doing right now, I'm more representing a candidate, and I'm try to find the best brand for them. So it is, if you are doing the shift, is understanding what works for you, and obviously adapting it to what is happening at that right moment. So it's just, yeah, as I say, for me, it's like helping people find what role is better suited to them. And Brett, obviously I've come across some clients since I've started with ALRA that I just didn't feel like working with them because, the comments and the negativity and everything else. So it's just trying to do the best by your candidates. And if you do that by your candidate, obviously, then you'll be more likely to be better serving the client as well.
That's a really a simple way to distill that, isn't it? The TA, you're really representing one brand, and with agency, like the way we approach things, you are representing a candidate. We have clients, of course, but you're right.
Yes.
Like, I think your biggest your advocacy is around the candidate side, right? I
Yeah.
love it.
And it's
World of
just
wisdom.
finding why. Why are you doing this? What's the purpose? What's bringing you joy? And just adapting it to whatever you're doing. But I'm loving it so far. There are days where it's not easy, especially the days where you don't make a deal or something, or you think you were so close and it goes so far. But at the end of the day, it's just bringing me a different type of joy, more time for myself, a little bit less stress at the moment, I have to say. And the time that which and it's so different to what it was back in the days with all the targets and the analytics. Is, I guess, probably still out there, but the way that we work with you is a little bit different. So that's
Yeah,
great.
I love it. Well, thank you, Marie. That was wonderful.
Thanks for having me.
We'll wrap that up. That's all we have time for you today. If you got anything out of today's episode, like, share, subscribe. Helps us grow. Have an amazing day. May all your deals come true.